we run and host. Lots of cool stuff happens here. Yeah, so that's sort of the very brief introduction. If you're interested, come grab me. Very happy to chat your ear off about it. So, cool. I don't know who I'm handing back to, but
okay.
Very excited as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. So yeah, thanks to Future House for hosting us today. I think we still need you for the next bit. Where's emergency evacuation? Yeah. And in case you want a personal emergency evacuation, the bathrooms on that side.
That was it.
That was it. That was a joke.
If this door is locked, there is another door that way. So,
okay.
But I think you should be fine. Yeah.
But yes, of course, Svelte Code of Conduct. We take our code of conduct very seriously. Luckily, we have never had to enforce it till now. But the code of conduct is online on our GitHub. So have a look at that. And if you have any issues, you can reach out to me, Scott there, or Willow, and Kane as well. Yeah, I think any one of the OGs, you can reach out to them. So yeah, agenda for this evening. We've got two wonderful talks by long-time Svelte members, Svelte London members. So Ajit, who's going to be talking about Auth and SvelteKit, the hard and easy ways, and Rowan, who is going to talk about 3 stories of walking in fire with his Svelte project. So that should be really interesting. So Ajit is going to go first, and then Rowan. The slides are in the wrong order. So yeah, give it up for Ajit.
Could you?
Yes. Could I hold this? Yes, I can.
Thank you. Do you want it with the thing or
Doesn't matter.
yeah? Good.
I mean, like, right?
Does that work? So am I ready to talk now?
Talking for a bit.
Okay, I guess we're waiting for YouTube to confirm that we can hear us.
That was a joke.
I don't have any good jokes, unfortunately.
Carl, did you want to hear
React server components are great.
Ironically, while we're waiting, I ironically got a message today from someone saying I wasn't sure if the Svelte Meetup was a programming thing or a sex thing.
I mean, is it really that different?
Yes.
Okay, so I can talk my talk now, right? Okay, cool. So, hello everyone. So this is going to be a talk about Auth and SvelteKit, specifically the PKCE flow for OAuth 2. I just said a lot of gibberish. What does that all mean? So PKCE is proof of key code exchange, I think. And it comes under, it's one of the flows that OAuth 2, the spec basically tells us. I actually do have the spec in my slides, so you can see what I have to basically read off of. But OAuth 2 is a paradigm that lets you talk to an authorization server, and because it's a spec, it's clearly defined. You know what to send to the authorization server, and it should work the same way across multiple different providers, such as Google, Facebook, GitHub. All of these support OAuth. And I'm actually going to show you first, in the hard way, is I'm going to be the Google of these providers. I'm going to show you basically what they do under the hood. And then I'm going to walk you through an easy way. It's only one of many easy ways. I'm not going to say this is the only way to do it, but it is just the way I prefer doing it in my own apps. So I just wanted to show you that. So let me get started a bit further.
Are you on Twitter?
I am on Twitter. It's actually my social media links on the end slide, but it's Chitpad Joyride. It'll be available in the end.
Got it.
Cool. So this is the diagram to explain what I'm talking about. It's still not great. It's still quite long. But let's start with the very, very top left. So the user clicks the login link and they generate a code verifier and challenge. Basically, those are the code verifier and challenges are both like long strings of like bit bytes and hashed and meant to be quite random. But I'll tell you more about what the verifier and challenges specifically are later. And then that basically gets set on the client. The client in this case is our Svelte app. It could also be a mobile app. So the reason why we're using PKCE is because it's actually really good for mobile apps and single page applications as well. Technically, SvelteKit doesn't need the full advantages of PKCE, but it's still good to have. And the second you try to basically port your app, make your app also a mobile app, you would likely want to have a PKCE flow. So it's still a good thing to do in the first place, because even if your current app is SvelteKit, you may eventually have a mobile app down the line. So then it goes to the authorization server, which is what I'm going to be building in our hardware first. That will create it'll request a code, an authorization code. And that's the basically some of the interesting parts. I actually didn't realize exactly how stateful it was until later, but I'll show you. And then you basically return that authorization code back. And then at some point, the user is ready to go and request for the code again. Wait a second. Oh yeah, sorry, 1 second. Because this is actually the OAuth flow. Sorry, my bad, I got confusing as well. So the first time you request authorization code and challenge, you set it, but you actually are also, because it's Google, you actually want to log into Google. So that's what that flow is. I actually technically skipped that step when I'm doing in my hardware, because I don't need to actually have you log in again. You're already logged into my app. I'm going to skip that in between user redirects and logs in again. I'm going to go straight to the authorization code being sent back from the user. So they request the code and then they send it back automatically. I skipped the login step in between because I'm not Google. I don't need you to log into Google in my service when you're already logged in the first step. Then the client sends me back a authorization code and verifier. This is actually a separate step. That's a step where you get a token. You get an access token that the server has generated for you. And then with that access token, you can now go back to our actual API resources and get the things you need. So let me quickly walk you through the spec I had to read off, basically. And you don't have to understand everything in detail. All it basically means is that there is a verifier that the first image there is a verifier. It shows you that it takes some like alphas and digits. Basically, there's a set of characters it accepts to be like part of these URLs. I'll show you a code example as well, so it will be a bit easier to understand. There's also a challenge. So basically the verifier comes first, and then the challenge comes second. Verifier is the secret. That's only the client. It will not be sent to the authorization server until the very end. The challenge is basically a hash of the verifier that will eventually be compared against. It's if you know password hashing, basically the recommended way to store passwords in your database is to hash it, because it's a one-way transformation. You cannot go back. So similar to here, the challenge cannot go back to the verifier. So if anyone actually has the verifier and they can make the right challenge, means that they had the right secret. because you cannot go back from here to the verifier. So the verifier is always a secret. You have to know it, or you don't, basically. So enough slides. I'm going to quickly walk you through some actual code. Let me see how long this looks. Okay, so here is my git diff. So I also want to show you like how many files it took. Here is actually some of the magic sauce. So basically random bytes in SHA-256, and then some logic to basically convert from bytes to base64. What that ends up being used in is this thing. Here we go. All that algorithm just compiles down to these 2 lines of code, basically. The verifier comes first. Verifier is just a base64 representation of a 32 random bytes. That's all it is. I think that's readable enough. The challenge is a hash of that verifier, as I said earlier. That's basically all that is as well. And then it gets converted to a base64 representation as well. That's so far, everyone following, I hope. Okay, now let's go back here. So I've done that. Cool. What's next? Now I'm going to send the challenge to the server. Okay. Let's see how to do that. So that's actually, so let me walk through a sign up flow and walk over here. So let's go until this step, until line 24. So we see these 3 lines. Here we created a challenge verifier, and now it's told me to send a challenge to the server. Cool, I've done that. So I'm going to send a challenge to the server. I'm going to keep the verifier for myself, basically. It won't be sent until later. You see that. So now I'm sending it to the server. What does the server have to do? And the server implementation, by the way, is over here, where I've signed up. I'm getting a challenge from the thing, and this is basically the next step. I'm going to show you that in a second. So now it has to return a code, the authorization code. Again, you don't have to read all this. It's just for representation purposes. You can actually read it yourself in the spec. The actual thing that matters here is that there's an authorization code you have to generate, and that code is now has to be affiliated to the challenge, because this has to be read later again. So this is the stateful part. I actually wasn't aware of this implementation myself. I didn't realize that you had to actually store it somewhere, either in a stateful session or you store it in your database. So in this case, I actually did decide to store it in my database. I added this extra table to my schema, PKCE challenges. It takes a challenge. Oopsies, I'm blocking it again now. Cool. So it takes a challenge and an auth code, and also associated to a user ID. So that way, I know that the user I just created has a challenge waiting to be basically associated to, and that will be the basically the challenge and auth code pair. And now that's what this thing says, that the auth code must be associated to the challenge. So if I go back to my implementation, my API, api.ts, here we are. Cool, this should work. So I created a user, I inserted it, and then I get back a auth code. How do I do that? Same as last time. There's a base64 URL representation of 30 random bytes. Once again, same thing. And then I insert that into the table with the pair, auth code challenge and the user ID that I just created. And now I return this back to the user, to the client. Cool, I've done that step now. Now the client has to get a token. Okay, how do you do that? Well, if I go back to my email password sign up flow, now I've gotten back the code, and I need to post the verifier and the code to the backend, and then that will be getting the token. See, I'm basically trying to get the token right now. And that you can get from here. I made a post request to get a token. So I've done that step. What does this mean? What does this thing have to say? So now I have to return a token. Cool. So how do you return a token? First of all, you need to figure out which, what's the challenge that I actually had for it, which I find based on the auth code. So I compare it to the auth code given to me. And now I have to compare the challenge that it was stored in my database originally against the hashed version of the verifier that they just gave me. So this is the secret that I had not given until just now. This is the first time the server's ever receiving the verifier, and it's a secret. But if the previous step was fine, the challenge came back earlier. This is the one-way transformation, like already done version of the verifier. If that was fine the first time, this should also pass. So then it should be a valid verifier. And that means I can now delete my challenge and I give back a token. And this is just a JWT mistake thing. The secret doesn't matter. It's not gonna dox me. You're not gonna be able to like hack my endpoints or anything. And I then create a JWT with a certain amount of like things, a subject of my user ID in my database, and then it sets the access tokens. This is the access token cookie. I set some details of the cookie and I return it back to the user. Cool, I finally done that. I guess that's it, cool. Let me actually, before I go to HTTP auth, let me quickly show you the actual use case of that. It goes to hooks.server.ts, where I now, so basically, let me finish this flow. So first I've done the post. I've got an access token set of my cookies. The cookies are HTTP only. If you saw my API.ts, they are HTTP only cookies here, which means they should be available for server functions to find. If I go here now, where was I? Yes. So basically, here. After my login, I'm going to redirect the dashboard. My middleware is going to kick in. So that's basically this hooks server file up here. It's going to be the middleware. It's going to check now every single time, is there an access token? If there is, it decodes the token, gives me back my session. So that's now starting to be useful. And at this point, if I'm signed in, which I should have been signed in if I got the access token, I'm now able to go to the dashboard. And from there on, it's basically just a bunch of code being like, this is how you sign. This is all the flows, and you can now start basically doing your queries. And if you're looking for the user, you can probably find it as well as part of the user ID over here. So that's how you get it working the hard way. Okay, so the rest of this talk is going to be much, much simpler. I just wanted to provide you enough value, so I was like, let me actually explain what's happening under the hood. And that way, even if you want to do it yourself, you should be able to do it with a higher understanding of what's actually required in these flows. So the rest of the talk is just me explaining one of the many ways that's been made easy. So I use HDB. HDB is a object graph kind of database. It feels like MongoDB in terms of developer experience, but it's Postgres under the hood. So, which I like. I want that. I need the safety of Postgres. I need it to be relational, but I like the developer experience of objects, especially when I'm working in JavaScript and TypeScript. So I like that. And then they actually just built in their own auth solution into their database. This is technically like Supabase in that it has auth. Supabase is also great. I'm not going to say no against that. It's just that I happen to use HDB for myself. So I'm going to walk you through what they do, and they use PKC under the hood, which is why I explained all of that complicated stuff. So here, I have to go to my schema. So remember, I had to say PKC challenges before. This time around, I just have to say that I'm going to use an extension of auth. I'm going to be finding a current user, And I now get actually extra benefits. So I basically create an identity, a relationship with the user. Now I get extra benefits. Do you see that I can now start doing stuff like access policies and row level security because my database understands natively who my user is. So I can now start doing row level security in my code. I think this is a bit of a pain to get it set up in Supabase. So I prefer this syntax of having row level security. This is also a computed property. So it's actually not stored in the database, it's just retrieved. I can now tell you if we can edit it or not based on just the global current user. And that's set, again, based on this thing that comes out of the box. And if I show you the hooks.server.ts, I basically get a built-in UI callback that I can use to create a user. And so actually, this is the thing. If you saw earlier, remember I had a lot of like similar code, create server request auth, is signed in, do all this stuff. The only thing additional is I have to basically create this callback, and I can create a user. And I needed to, here we are. Basically, I actually went and got Google as well, because I didn't just do email, I did Google as well, because it's just so simple. So I did Google as well. I got the original query from their example though. And then I also went and basically fetched the latest Google info from their API for user info. Okay, so the rest of it stuff is going to look like this, so just a bunch of code. And let me show you a live example. So here we are, we have the example. This came out of the box. It's actually built-in UI. I actually didn't create any of this. This is why I had in my hooks.server.ts a built-in UI callback, because I didn't create any of this. I only configured, actually I should have got this URL set up already, 10.7.08. So basically I only basically said, this is my Google and email password, and this is going to be my URLs to redirect back to, and I got this from that. So next time I Google, I'm logged in. I've already created a post before, so you can see over here, actually, this is a post I created with Ajit Krishna, and I can edit it because this is actually my post. However, if I were to try to change this one, is it mean by email login? I can't. And if I were to try to do that, I decided to this guy, I think oh, thank you. Cool. So now I'm logged in as my email. And if I were to go here now, I can edit it. If I go back here now, I can't, because this is not the same user. And that was my demo. All right. The rest of the details you could probably ask me after a chat. I'm sure there's some technologies I may have used that you might have wanted to use as well. Feel free to ask me. Here are social media links. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, GitHub, and I work at a company that's hiring in New York. So I unfortunately can't offer any hiring to anyone here, but they also said feel free to like share the place I'm working at. Cool.
Thanks, Ajit. Does anyone have any questions for Ajit right now? Rowan.
Given that you created all the old stuff already, have you thought about like packaging things up in a library and throwing it on GitHub, or have you done that already?
I have not. And I wasn't really planning to, but if you want me to do something specifically, feel free to. I've already actually done most of the hard work already. And that was the earlier thing I showed you, the hard one, was Terso Drizzle, and Elysia for my API routes, because it was just easy to have like gRPC-like routes.
Makes sense.
I think Morris had a question.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of people with questions.
So HTTP, what's the migration path away from that? Stop using HTTP.
Great question. So if you stop using HTTP,
Repeat it back.
yeah, so basically the question was, what's the migration path out of HTTP if you don't want to use HTTP for any longer? So the auth stuff is going to be a bit more tricky, but end of the day is just the rest of the database. The rest of the data is all the same things you get in Postgres. So the only thing is you'll no longer have auth built into your database, but the rest of it is all just Postgres tables. You just export out of HTTP back to Postgres, bump it into Superbase, and then get their auth to work. So figure that out. But otherwise, all the data that you actually care about should be just Postgres, and you can just export it out.
Questions. So there's a question on YouTube. Someone wants answered. The first, which I'm sure everyone was wondering, was what did you use to highlight your code in all the examples?
That was just the built-in VS Code diff, get diff.
Cool. Okay, so someone asking on YouTube, how do you test the hooks and lightning code?
What?
How do you test the hooks?
The hooks are server.ts.
Yeah.
You can test that. Okay, so basically, the way it's implemented right now, it's it basically just goes to every single URL that you come in through. So you can literally just so okay, fine. One thing I didn't disclose during this talk was I actually technically broke my implementation because I'm using a lot of bun, and bun actually broke with Jose. So I actually, there's some weird error that I couldn't be bothered to change out of just say there's a different provider of GWT. But other than that, the hooks do actually work on every single request. I mean, that's literally how this one's working. And the HTTP implementation, this is the HTTP one. That actually is working, and you saw it earlier. So for example, if I actually want to check this one right now, if I go to / here, so this is the HTTP example. I'm already logged in. I should now be going back to dashboard. You see that? I didn't get rooted out of it. I didn't get changed out of here. And now if I sign out, I go here. Let me go to dashboard. Actually, here's an example. There, I had that already set up. How did that happen? It's because I have over here, if you're not signed in and you try to go dashboard, I return you back to the home page with this error message. And that was actually showing you a thing. So that's actually from the middleware. I guess as an example of the hooks handle working.
And someone was asking on YouTube, where's the source?
Where's the sauce?
Yeah.
Great question. It's actually in my GitHub URL, GitHub profile. I did just put up the HTTP one. Once I get this, as I said, I didn't want to disclose it too much, but the one basically broke as soon as I put in JWT, which is the very final step I did. So everything else I was testing before that, but during this step, it broke. So once I get this part changed to a different provider that doesn't break a bun, I will put that up as well. So it'll be in my GitHub pending.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah. Why did you use bun?
Why did I use bun? It's
And,
like,
I guess
yeah?
like a follow-up, are you hosting, did you swap out the backend on SvelteKit to bun, or like, is it a separate server you're running?
Okay, so great questions, both of those. So first question was, why do I use bun? The reason I use bun is just because it's fun and it's good. And bun fun. And actually one more thing as well. If you saw my implementation actually over here, it gives you a lot of good helpers, such as I just did bun.password verify. I didn't bother installing Argon 2. I just used their built-in password. And also the backend I'm using. So the next question actually leads it very well nicely into the second question, which is what backend am I using? So I know this looks like Elysia and it looks like a different app. It's actually just SvelteKit. This is just a app that if you look at my API, if you look at this URL, it's /API/slug/server.ts. It goes here, it's a request handler, and it basically just handles all the gets, posts, patch, and delete. And if you actually try to call it, it's actually REST APIs. These are REST APIs, and over here, I literally implement REST APIs over here as well. It's just that I put in my app as the handler of these requests. And now everything is routed to my Alicia app, which I liked because I get built-in validation. You see my hook. You see over here, the body. The email is already validated to be email. Password challenge must be there. It's not optional. And you see over here, for example, name is nullable. I get built-in validation and a bunch of other benefits. Alicia is like a server that runs with SvelteKit. It only works on Bun. The alternative is a thing called Hono, which works in many different environments. I personally prefer Alicia's busy choices, but end of the day, Hono is as good as well. I would probably use Hono if I wasn't using Alicia. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, let's clap for it again. And yeah. Yeah.
We're on the stream still, so if you're talking.
Yeah. What do you want him to talk about?
No, I'm just saying, if we're going to introduce Rowan, you can do it on here.
Yeah. So Rowan's coming up next. He'll be talking about.
Three stories of walking in the fire with my Svelte.
Yeah, 3 stories of walking in the fire with the SvelteKit app. Rowan.
Thank you.
Is that cool. Testing now. YouTube is cool. All right. Yeah, I titled my talk a while ago, and so forgive the name of my talk. My name is Rowan. Test by having people use things. A lot of this talk is going to be picking up on issues that have been flagged in the Drizzle ORM issues on GitHub. And so hopefully you guys can give me some advice after the talk on things you know about SvelteKit and maybe some of the stuff that comes up with regard to the issues I had. So let's kick things off. What is Kata? What am I? Kata is an AI property search company, currently the only one that is live for rentals in London. We haven't done any data ingress for a while, but if you do want to test it out, then there's the link. I do a lot. We actually are bringing on 2 UX people. One has already started, one is going to join, but basically I am the TikTok guy, the sales guy, the product guy, and the engineer. I was previously a software engineer at checkout.com, and I know people in the room are also engineers at that company. So straight into it. Cool. So as part of being an AI property search company, we deal with location data for listings. Part of that means that we need to support coordinates and specific locations, right? I'm using Postgres just because it makes sense. And PostGIS is the go-to extension for dealing with location data with Postgres. What do we do when we need to use non-native data types? The answer, I assume, is a given, which is define our own.
I was going to say turn it into a string.
Yeah, I mean, that could work too. It depends what we want to do with our data. Specifically with locations, we want to check if something is within someone's requirements. And so PostGIS supports many types out of the box, and the driver that Drizzle is using wouldn't know how to handle those. But luckily, there is a workaround. And so this is how I put out that fire, I guess. I started by defining what a coordinate is. I called it point. And yeah, out of the box, you will see could not determine data type as a result of the driver not being able to handle this new defined interface. To avoid that error, I use the SQL.raw syntax instead of what they call the magic operator, which doesn't work great. And so using that, it allows me to use the PostGIS specific functions. So in this case, it's geography from text, meaning that I can handle my interface point, if you can see point, bracket, longitude, latitude, and that allows me to convert the text to geography when I am running these queries. When we want to use this in our queries to fetch things, as opposed to putting things to the database, so upsetting, we can still use the PostGIS function extensions here. So you can see STX for me to get my latitude, I forget the order, and STY to get the longitude. They also do support a from driver method. But I can upsert just by inserting the coordinates. So here, yes, my mouse is on screen. I can just set my coordinates on the object that is coming in, and then just do insert. The values are just the new listing itself in the CASA case, and decide what to do with my query from there. So that was the fire extinguisher, pretty much. Supporting PostGIS in Drizzle, you can do by defining your own interface and using the from driver and to driver methods that they support out of the box. Cool. Next thing that came up, this one is kind of me venting about Drizzle again, is dynamic query building. So those of you that have used Prisma are familiar with this concept. It's pretty common, right? Like in general, based on the logic that your applications have, you might want to where something in your SQL where clause. The big oversight is that their documentation is really bad and doesn't explain that the where is an overwrite, not a add-on, meaning that chaining the where function call doesn't work as you would expect it to. This has been flagged since December 2023, frequently appears in the Discord support, and is an active issue, unless it isn't since Friday, but it was on Friday. And so you can see this is just me highlighting someone's complaining on the GitHub issue. So how can I handle this branching of logic without duplicating the code of like, if this, completely rewrite the where clause, if this, completely rewrite the where clause. And here is the code for it, right? So after constructing the query itself, I've used a helper function, like a utility, just to wrap applying my where conditions into one function. So I've called that set where conditions here. And now when I'm about to run my query, i.e. body equals await query and wait for that promise. Before that, I immediately set the where conditions. And in that function, I take the base conditions, so the stuff that always apply regardless of what that person is looking for. And then the location, so specifically the locations that they're looking at, and the viewed listings such that they don't see duplicates for the matches that we serve them. The cool bit, I say, in terms of like making this work conditionally, is having this array that I append conditions to based on if something is true. So if they have viewed listings, then we can just make sure that that listing ID is not in the array and push it to our conditions. And then this whole helper function returns a where clause from Drizzle. So we use the query builder to return the where, and you can see that that's the query that is returned when we're calling this helper function. Here's my little meme. There was actually a bug that made me spot this when I launched early access, where people were saying that they get irrelevant matches when they put location preferences in, and I realized that using .where is overwriting the original thingy. Then I see on GitHub that everyone else is complaining as well, which was nice to know. So that's another fire extinguished. And then the final thing is more SvelteKit related, and hopefully you guys can give me more advice than I'm just going to tell you what I want to do with regards to the feedback that people have given me. So we want swipe animations. I've written a bit about why. Cards feel smooth. They make things smooth. People use Tinder. It feels a bit addictive. People use TikTok. It's just a good interaction to have on applications. Part of SvelteKit is the whole like dynamic slope-based routing. And so people can traverse through their listings just by swiping through. But in order to not bloat your app, it's kind of difficult to just give them all the listings on the client side. And so, yeah, swiping right now, I'm just using a loading animation for, and I'll show the code for that, though many of you heard probably. Right now, it's super basic. I just have a layout.ts, so kind of like a generic file, where if the navigating store is happening, then I just put the loading spinner in, which is a custom component that I've written, which is just some CSS that does the little loading that you saw on the previous screen. And then here's my plan, which hopefully you guys can tell me is a good plan or a bad plan after the talk, or maybe in the questions. But I'm thinking about using Swiper.js, listening to the swipe event, fetching the next listing that they're swiping. No, okay, I'm getting feedback live. I'm getting live feedback, but it's okay. We'll handle that after. And then using a skeleton component such that the swipe itself just takes you to a new card and you have this like ghosted out component. I'm not sure how clear it is on screen, but that's currently where I'm at. So the feedback has come back from the people in the early access program. I just haven't implemented any code changes yet because we're working on other things, which you can ask about if you're interested in Casa. But yeah, that's like the third fire-ish. I didn't extinguish it, so this is my closing slide. Thank you for listening. Right now, with what we're building, I need introductions to estate agents and would appreciate introductions to investors, ideally silly ones that I like can just practice my pitch on because I'm not fundraising. You can also use the app, as I said, but it's at the point where feedback has begun to aggregate from everybody in early access. So it would be cool, but I'm actually working on SaaS tooling right now for estate agents, and it's basically whether the company dies or not. So if you know estate agents, whether it's your mum, dad, dog, whoever, that's really the thing we need. That QR code will take you to my LinkedIn, I think. And yeah, hopefully that was kind of interesting and Drizzle-ish. Cool.
Yeah, questions for Rowan. Joe.
I'm curious, where are you getting the listings from? Are you scraping Rightmove?
Yes, so we aggregate listings from not just Rightmove, but just from all across the market, and then we deduplicate them and match people with them based on natural language.
Right. You're doing it against the terms and conditions?
That's unclear.
Yeah, anyone else?
What are you thinking when you're putting in the SQL escape hatch? Were you just thinking, why am I doing this in Drizzle rather than just using the client and just bulldog in the SQL?
The question is, what was I thinking when I used the SQL.raw escape hatch that Drizzle supports instead of just using whatever default clients I can use? I was thinking, why am I using Drizzle? I was on the Discord complaining. I was on the GitHub issues, seeing if any other person has had these problems. It seems like they had. PostGIS is a pretty big Postgres extension, so a lot of people use it, and it's kind of surprising that they haven't added that on. And instead, they just like keep pushing features to this like Drizzle kit thing and like things that no one actually cares about. So I kind of just complained for a bit and then decided like I'll use the SQL.raw and escape. I'm not going to plug the product. Let's shout it out. Fair enough.
All right, think we're done.
Now we are going to head to the pub. Which pub do we go to?
There's a good one next to the overground station.
Okay, all right.